coming up?
We were all sitting there, and one blind picked up halfway in the midair and then flat back down. Our friend looked at me and he goes, I believe you.
Welcome to Unholy Vibes. I am Alex, your host, and today we are joined by a very special guest, Andrea. Go ahead and introduce yourself, let the people know who you are, and we can talk about how we met.
My name is Andrea. I've got quite a bit of stories. A friend of mine was like, hey, I know you have some stories.
Yeah. That friend being Cassandra. Cassie was a guest on the show. By the time this comes out, it'll have been like 2 or 3 episodes previous to this. She had a lot of great stories, and she got into some secondhand stories, which were yours. I said, I love to hear it secondhand, but I'd much rather hear it from the source. She said, let me reach out to Andrea and see if she'll be willing. And here we are. I'm really excited. I'm really glad you agreed to come on the show. So thank you. I'm really excited. So, give us some background on some of these stories and let's dive into them. How many stories do you have on lock?
I can go on for a while. Two main ones from two different places that we lived in Washington, but I have several experiences.
Okay. So, go ahead and give us some
Okay.
background. Tell us your background. I know it was you were in the military and were on military housing, I should say.
Yes.
So, yeah, dive in. I will try my best to save my questions for last, but no guarantees. I apologize, but I have to know certain
Okay.
things when it pops into my head.
Yeah. I'm going to try my hardest because I have no idea what I'm doing. So I did make notes in a book. So I'm
Okay.
just going to keep referring to that different times. But I guess I'll just tell the story. I'm a military spouse. We have lived in Washington State two different times. Majority of the time we've lived in military housing. We lived in Washington for 8 years, and the energy is so different in the state. It's just I never liked living there. You either love it or you hate it. And to me, just being there was so heavy energetically. I just feel like anywhere you go, you're going to have some sort of paranormal activity. In every house that we've been in, we've had some sort of activity happen. The house that we lived in that Cass had mentioned, a lot of stories I know I've kind of blocked from that time in my life, but it was just an old single house that backed up a little bit to American Lake, which is a really pretty lake. It's very clear, but it's on the older side of the military base, split up into north and then the regular part. It used to be old officer housing, and then they just had regular enlisted in there. Probably my best experience was we were sitting on the couch. We had these really beautiful, just one wall with windows, and you could look right into the woods, kind of see a little bit of the lake, but it was nighttime and we were sitting on the couch getting ready to watch a movie. You could see the reflection of the inside of the house from the wall of the windows. You couldn't really see outside. It was dark enough that it was just mainly inside. And my husband was in the front room. My kids were sitting on the couch with me, and my grandma was sitting on the couch. And I looked in the window, and there was a solid figure of a man standing in the kitchen. I looked back, saw nothing, looked back into the window, and it was gone. We had lived there a few months at the time. And I was like, oh God, here we go. I feel like every place we live in, something's happening. And sometimes it takes a few weeks. That was probably one of the best things that had happened in that house. My kids were a lot littler than they are now. They both slept in their rooms before we moved to this house. As soon as we got in there, my daughter would not sleep in her room at all.
Mm.
She did not, the whole time that we lived in that house, she slept in her room before we moved there. And then as soon as we moved out, there was just something about her room that she didn't like. People that would come and stay, they didn't want to be in her room. My husband had an aunt and uncle that lived there, and he briefly watched the kids in the summertime so that I could work, and he stayed a few days at a time. And he got to a point where he was like, I have to go home. I don't know what's in that room, but I feel terrible and I need to get out of here. I would see orbs, and I've never had that experience other than living in that house, just big balls of light when you're trying to have a conversation with someone. And a few times this happened with a neighbor. So getting that clarification of, did you just see that? Yeah, I saw that. I'm not crazy. It's not the wine that we're drinking that I'm seeing things. It was
Groups
nuts.
like
I was like, this is fine. This is totally normal. I saw it. You saw it. We're fine. Gosh, what else happened? Like I said, I blocked a lot of that chunk of living there out. So I'm sure Cass has some better stories than I did. The way that people would feel when they would come over, the way the kids were, the way I felt, it was just always so heavy there. I followed a page, JBL and Ghost Stories, and I don't really recall how I got talking with a gal and her friends, but they did like EVP readings. They did little ghost hunting things. And I was like, hey, would you like to come over to my house and see if you can catch anything? And they came over one day and there wasn't anything too exciting, but you would get different words here and there. And of course, it was in the daytime. So I feel like anytime that you ever watch the shows, and it's
yeah,
always at night,
yeah.
in the middle of the night, that things happen. So I was a little disappointed that they didn't catch anything, but they definitely were like, yeah, we feel it's creepy here. And I'm like, it really is.
So this is all happening in the same house, and you said you've had experiences in every house you've lived in. Do you mean
Hmm.
military housing specifically, or just every house you've ever lived in, military and non?
Almost every house I've lived in, military and non. Just my whole life, I've had a lot of, I guess I'm sensitive and I can pick up on things, but majority of the places that I've lived, we've had some sort of activity.
Interesting. Yeah, you're the haunted one,
Hmm.
Gary. You're bringing all the bad vibes.
I
No,
hope not.
listen, there's no exact science to it, right? I'm not sensitive to these things. Believe it or not, I run the podcasts for the sake of living vicariously through other people's scary experiences. But I myself have very few things to talk about when it comes to the paranormal or the supernatural. I believe in these things. I can't even fathom what it's like to be like yourself.
Yeah.
A lot of the guests on my show are more sensitive to these spiritual matters or supernatural matters. I can't imagine what it's like being you, where every place you go, you're like just waiting for the shadow figures to show up.
We bought a house almost a month ago, and I'm like, is something going to start happening here? I'm waiting and I hope that it doesn't. But with our history, there's usually something that is attached to everywhere we go.
I mean, a month in though, you're doing all right so far, right?
I do have a couple stories, but I'm hoping that it was just my imagination. I like to gaslight myself for a while until,
Everything is fine. Yeah, you're gaslighting yourself and be like, I'm crazy, I'm crazy. It's not really there. That's crazy. That's funny.
yeah.
So, Cassie had mentioned a story about like, and let me rewind. I find it not necessarily funny, but kind of funny and interesting that you have just blocked these things out of your mind. That's like a
Mhm.
trauma response.
It was a very difficult time in life, and I just don't want to remember those 2 years at all.
Was it just because of the spooky stuff or life in general?
No, just
Okay.
life in general.
Okay. Okay. She had mentioned a story. Yes, let's discuss your traumas. Now, she mentioned a story where you had seen a figure of a woman and she likened it unto like the Ring girl, like the girl from the Ring or like the Grudge where they have like the long hair and was like creeping around. I can cut this out if you can't remember it. Go to her recording and sift through it to find what she was talking about.
So the only thing I can recall, and this wasn't my experience, it was my husband's. We had our bed and we were facing the closet. I was kind of turned into him. I was talking to him and I could see his face. He was looking at the closet and his face got really serious. He was looking back and forth and I was like, what? And he was like, you don't want to know. Just keep talking. And he's like, you really don't want to know. Finally, I got it out of him and he was like, there was this face of a woman in the closet and the grin that she had. I don't like that. It was very uneasy for him. Her grin, that she had this huge grin.
I think that might have been it.
It was,
The unnaturally large grin sounds familiar to me.
yeah.
And that gave me the chilly willies. You know what I mean? It gave me the chills.
Yeah.
And I hear a lot of stories, and not all of them get me like that, but I'm able to imagine that whole thing in my mind and just being him looking over.
Yeah.
Because so behind me is my bed, right? And over there is my closet. And it's It's like a sliding door one, you know?
Uh-huh.
And my closet door is always open just because I always have the one side opened because that's where all my stuff is at, you know? And
Mm.
I can just imagine sitting here looking and be like, yeah, I don't like that. Anyway, I digress. That was it. That was the story I was thinking of. So thank you. Please continue. Tell me more. Walk us through this is all in Washington so far. Where are we at now? Give me some more.
So still same house, Washington State. We were getting ready to move. We knew that we were going to move in like 2 months. And it was Halloween time. And my husband was like, "Oh, I feel brave. I think I'm going to do one of those EVPs and try to see if he can hear anything in my daughter's room." And
Oh,
I went
real
around
quick.
with him.
What are you saying? It's a what?
The EVP.
So when I think ghost hunting style acronyms, I think EMF, but that's like a electromagnetic field reader to see if
Yeah.
there's, but EVP, you're making it sound like it's a sound thing?
Yeah, I think I could be saying it completely wrong, but it's where it goes through the channels really
Oh,
fast
that's
to
like a
pick up.
spirit box.
Yes,
Okay, okay.
he was doing the spirit box and going through her room. He didn't really get anything and kept talking, provoking, like, "Say something to me, get in my face, who's here?" It wasn't until he got around the closet that he got, "Get out of my face." And it was dark. I was like, "I'm done. I'm ready to pack my stuff. I'm ready to go. I don't want to provoke whatever is in this house anymore." It takes a lot for him. He's got to really push to believe.
Right.
And seeing the face and then that EVP, that was after 2 years what he was like, "Okay, now I see what you're talking about."
It is
Weird.
EVP. It is
Okay.
electronic voice phenomenon, I believe.
Okay.
Electronic voice phenomenon, EVP, and the device is what they call a spirit box, but it just runs
Okay.
through. Yeah, yeah, I know about it. I know about spirit boxes. Yes, it runs through the channel and
Okay.
you can hear stuff. There's also a way to use that or something similar. It's called the Estes method, but it's a whole different. Anyway, whole other. We don't need to get into that. So this actually scares your husband.
Yeah. Because it was just very clear, "Get out of my face."
Ugh.
Yeah.
What did you do about that?
I didn't do anything. I went in the room. I was like, "I don't want to mess with this anymore. I'm over it."
Did you ever have someone come to your house and try and cleanse it or bless it or anything like that?
So I would try to stage the house myself, and that would seem to be okay for a while, but then the eerie feelings would pick back up. My daughter never wanted to be in her room. There was no amount of trying to sound bath or sage that make the energy better that was gonna make her even want to be in there.
Right. Dang, that is wild. I don't like any of this. I mean, I do. This is fantastic. It's fascinating and it's entertaining for me. But I feel like y'all were put in such a situation of like, well, we know there's something, but
Yes.
now we just have to deal with it.
Yeah, unfortunately, you do have to just deal with it. If I would have went to the housing office and been like, "Hey, I think that our house is haunted," they would have laughed at my face and told me to move on with my life.
Or they might have been like, you're right, it is. So what?
Can't do
Your
anything about it,
Yeah, yours and all the other houses on base, right? So
pretty much.
my sister, her husband's military, and they were in some military housing in Oklahoma. Just all sorts of stories from there as well. So I get it. The military housing,
Yeah,
just there's too much history and energy in a lot of those places. And I feel like no matter what, you're gonna have something happen.
yeah.
Really? So you hear this voice on the spirit box. Your husband hears it. Were you all together or was it just him?
So at first it was just him, and then I kind of creeped around and started listening with him and heard that, and I was like, "No."
And how long did you stay in?
That was Halloween night, and we ended up moving 2 months later.
Okay.
So we were physically in that house for 2 years.
Yeesh.
Mhm.
Did anything like aggressive or malicious ever happen, or was it just bad vibes? Unholy vibes, one might say.
Yeah. I never had anything malicious in that house, just the bad vibes, but nothing was violent, nothing ever flew off the wall or anything.
That's good, right?
Yeah.
You still have to live with this constant tension, but it's good that there was no. specific or malicious like attacks on you, because I've
Yeah.
again, the lesser of two bad things, but still, it's still bad. I've had people
Yeah.
tell me about their experiences where the spirits or ghosts or entities in their areas were more malicious and aggressive. Once it gets to that, yeah, I'd have been like, I'm gone. Props to you guys for staying as long as you did. I mean, it's the military, so you kind of have not much of a choice.
Yeah.
So after that, what next? Walk me through. What else have you got?
So our most scary and active experiences were when we very first moved to Washington State. We moved into this one bedroom apartment in Lakewood. From the beginning, there were things constantly happening. We just moved there, very young, just married, just had a baby. Our son was probably a month old. I just packed up what I could in my car, which was mainly the baby stuff. We were waiting for our household goods to get to our apartment. We went to Target, bought a few dishes. This was the very first thing that happened right off the bat. So my husband was in the bathroom. He was running the bath water, getting ready to give our son a bath, and he had him in the bathroom. I was in the front room. You couldn't see in the kitchen, but we had just bought a few plastic plates and put them on the countertop to dry on top of the towel. I was in the front room, he was in the bathroom with the baby, and I heard a crash. And I immediately ran to the bathroom, started banging on the door, and was like, well, something fell in the kitchen. The towel, all of the dishes, and I'm talking like 4 plates, bowls, silverware, was all on the floor.
Oh,
Yeah. And we both just looked at each other like, this happened. I can't explain it.
yeah, yeah.
That terrified me. I already know what's going to happen is it's going to be the whole time that we have this lease, we're going to have to experience things like this. There was a constant feel of just being watched
Hmm.
all of the time. I hated it. My husband was gone all of the time. So it was just me and the baby. I hated being there by myself because I just constantly felt like I was being watched. There was no sense of us just being alone ever. Anytime that I would be on the telephone, my family would be like, what is that noise? And I'm like, I don't hear anything. And they're like, it sounded very sinister. Like we heard cackling, growling. They would hear it. I would hear nothing, but they would hear a bunch of stuff on the phone and just be freaked out. And would tell them stories like, oh, this happened. This scared me. I couldn't sleep tonight because I kept feeling like somebody was watching me. They were just freaked out. And I really tried to stop calling people after that because they could hear things every call.
At least not calling them from home, right?
Yeah.
That is wild for them. Like, that's the kind of stuff you see in movies.
Yeah.
I genuinely don't like that. If I called someone and I heard growling and cackling and all sorts of weird noises in the background, and they were like, no, nothing. I don't know what you're talking about. I'd think there was something wrong
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah.
Like, oh, I've lost it. Or I'd be like,
Yeah. They're
hey,
like, how do you not?
yeah, you should get that checked. I don't like that.
Yeah.
Let's go backwards in time, as far back as you can remember. What's like your earliest experience with something like this? Where did this all really start for you?
My earliest, and my mom remembers me telling her this, my very first memory, my scariest one. We were staying with my stepdad's dad at the time, and I was upstairs alone in my room, and I had one of those, it's an old Fisher Price or Little Tykes plastic toy boxes, white sides with the green. And I had all my toys in there, and I remember I was just playing with my toys and I looked up at my toy box and a hand came out and said, come here. And I slid under the bed and I was terrified. I couldn't move for a while. And when it just stayed there, it wasn't like it was a big enough toy box that somebody could get in there and play a joke on me. Me and my mom were in the house and that was it. And I mean, it stayed there up out of the toys, just the hand. When I finally built up enough courage to get out, I ran downstairs and told my mom what happened. We went upstairs. She didn't find anything, and she still remembers me telling this to her. I was probably 4 or 5.
I'm gonna I'm I'm gonna lose it. I don't even know what to say to that.
I don't tell a lot of people that.
Well, what even?
I don't know.
Okay. What did the hand look like? Was it just fleshy? Was it
It was
was it black? Like a black, dark, demonic looking spooky hand with long nails? Describe this to me.
it was just a hand with a black like leather glove. There was nothing spooky about it, nothing like Freddy Krueger like. It was just a black leather gloved hand.
Oh my goodness. Okay. Oh my goodness. Call it. This is it. This is the end. Oh my goodness. Why are you making this up? Are you punking me right now?
I wish that I was making this up. Like I said, I don't tell many people because unless you've experienced it before, it's so hard to fathom. Like, oh, she's such a liar. She's making it up. And I don't have any reason to lie.
Okay. I'm glad I asked. Were you going to mention that if I had not said anything?
Yeah.
What is your mom's perspective on all of this? Is she sensitive to these sorts of things?
She is not. She always knew that I was, that whenever I was little, I would look off to the corner and laugh at things that weren't there. She's always known that I've been able to pick up on things that other people can't see, but she's not sensitive like that.
Anyone in your family other than you?
No, not that I know of.
You're the special one. My mom and my sister are more on the sensitive side. My mom more so. And if anyone who's listened to this show since the beginning of season one, they know I've talked about my mom plenty of times. And she's a witch, basically. She runs a crystal shop and does energy work and healings and all that stuff. But she's always been very sensitive to people. She can tell when someone has an attachment to them.
Hmm.
She's performed like exorcisms in a sense where people come into her and say like something's wrong with this. She goes, there's a spirit attached to you. It helps it move off and move on. All good vibes. Nothing ever super spooky. You have this, I call it a blessing slash curse. It's a little bit of both. You have this blessing, you have this curse, whatever you want to. It seems all not great. And you've never been like, wow, look at that beautiful angel. It sounds like all your stories are, wow, look at
No.
that demon trying to taunt me.
Yeah, pretty much.
Okay, please continue. I know you got your notes. Continue to walk us through your life journey. I just wanted to go back to the earliest instance that you remembered
Yeah.
and continue the deep dive. Please keep taking us through it.
Let me get back to the apartment. We would hear, like I said, an apartment never felt that we were alone. My husband would be gone all the time. Our son was just a baby. He couldn't sleep very well. He would do okay if I was in the room, but anytime that I would leave the room, he would immediately start crying. It was every time a nap, going to sleep. I couldn't be anywhere but in the room if he needed to be asleep. The minute I stepped out, he would start crying. One of the times that my husband was gone, there was another spouse that had a young daughter. So one of the times that my husband had did a training exercise where he had to be gone, there was another spouse that had a young daughter that was maybe a few months older than our son. Didn't really like to be alone either, so she decided that when the guys were gone, she was going to stay the night at my apartment with me. And I was like, that's fine. She was a very petite girl. She was a few months pregnant, and I wasn't going to make her sleep on the couch or anything. And I was like, the babies can sleep in the crib. You can sleep in my bed. That's fine. I was ready to go to sleep. I'm an early sleeper. And I was like, I'm going to go lay down. Whenever you're ready, just go in the room. And so I went in the room and I was sleeping and I had my back. I was rolled over to the side of the bed and I woke up and felt like she had got in the bed and the bed kind of sunk down quite a bit. I was like, my gosh, she's a tiny girl. I know she's pregnant, but I know she weighs less than I do. This really dipped down far and I felt it sink. I rolled over and she was not in there. And
Mm.
I got up and I went in the front room and she was on the phone. I said, did you just get in the bed? And she said, no. I said, well, somebody got in that bed and it wasn't the babies. She was like, dude, I'm so sorry, but I don't think I can stay here. She ended up getting her stuff and went home.
You scared her away.
I did. She did not want anything to do with staying in that apartment.
You're like, please, I need someone now.
I was like, great, here we go. I lost the one person that could have kept me company. And nope, she didn't want anything to do with it.
How many times did that happen, or was that a one-time occurrence?
The bed thing, that was the only time that had happened.
I feel like from all the stories you've told, it's not the same thing happening over and over again. One weird thing will happen and then they're just done.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't like that. Keep going.
Okay. We were only there for a year. It was a year lease with this apartment. And we had moved in about November. So this was that following summer. My sister had come to stay with us for a few weeks, and she was really young at the time. She was maybe 13, 14. And she would sleep in the living room. And it was maybe a week into her being there that she came to me and she was like, "Hey, I don't want you to make fun of me or make me feel bad, but I feel very uncomfortable sleeping out in the front room." And I'm like, "Why? What's going on?" And she's like, "I feel like someone's watching me. Like I have to have mom and dad be on the phone with me so that I can fall asleep every night." I felt really bad. I totally understand. And so I was like, "Okay, you're not crazy. These are my experiences that I've had here. Something is here." So we had her sleep in our room from then on, and she stayed with us a couple of weeks. And then I think we had about a week to ourselves. And then my husband's sister, who's pretty much about the same age, come and stay a few weeks. And same thing. I didn't say anything to her about my experiences in the apartment, didn't tell her any of the experiences that my sister had had. And she also slept in the front room. And we were watching one of those ghost hunting shows on TV.
Right.
And we had spent the day watching it. And she was like, "Hey, can I tell you something?" And I was like, "Yeah." She said, "I don't like being out here. Like when you and Rob go to sleep, I feel like someone's watching me." And I was like, "Yeah, my sister said the same thing. These are my experiences." And she told me of her experience. She felt like she was being watched one night, and we had a sliding back door. And she said she looked over and she saw a man sitting crisscross applesauce in front of the sliding back door. She was like, "I was done after that." She slept in our room until it was time for her to go home, just like my sister had, because she was just as freaked out as everybody else with the apartment.
Do you ever think that maybe someone was living in the walls or the attic or the crawl space in any of these instances? Or do you think it was all purely a spiritual sort of thing?
I think it was all pure spiritual. Just if you had seen this apartment, there really would be no place to hide. It was a tiny one bedroom apartment, a closet, wasn't a walk in, it wasn't anything fancy.
Okay.
Yeah, there was no place for anybody to hide.
The reason I ask is because I had a guest on the show in season one where someone was living in their attic and traveling through the wall spaces between condos.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So I think about that all the time. So
God.
every story someone tells me, I'm like, maybe it was just someone living in your crawl space. You never know. New fear
Yeah.
unlocked. It's called frogging with
Yeah.
H. But yeah, people are crazy. So w- remind me, this is Washington, but this isn't military.
He was in, but when we first got there, the wait to get in the housing was like 9 months to a year. So
Oh,
we
okay.
had to get an apartment.
Oh, okay. I just feel like there's a lot of history in a lot of places.
Mhm.
And my personal opinion is the older a place gets, the more likelihood it has of being haunted. So anything pre 1970s is just a no for me.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
these places are all old. We knew it all along. There's going to be something. So I think about people living in the walls and I will never stop. Thanks a lot, Haley. Shout out Haley Fuller, the demonologist. Okay, sorry, continue. So two sisters in a row, both
Uh-huh.
uncomfortable. One sees a little crisscross applesauce shadow figure in front of the door, and it's game
Mhm.
over from there. You're all sleeping together in your room.
Yeah.
Where do we go from here?
Like I said, I don't share my experiences too often anymore because more often than not, you find people don't believe what you say. We had a group of friends that I was like, "No, I'm telling you that this place is haunted. I see, I hear." things happen all the time. And they were mainly men in the military that were friends with my husband. And they're like, oh, nothing, like you're just making stuff up or it's your imagination. Nobody ever believed me until one night. We had a friend over and we were all sitting on the couch watching a movie. Lights were on, and we to the sliding back door. That's where people came in because there was more parking in the back,
Mm.
but it was shut. We had the like long kind of flat blinds that went across that break if you look at them wrong.
Yeah.
And we were all sitting there, and one blind picked up halfway in the midair and then slapped back down. Our friend looked at me and he goes, I believe you. And I was like, thank you. That's all I needed. And he was like, that was all it took. Everything that you said, I am so sorry for making you feel bad. And I was like, that is example of what I'm talking about.
That's all it
Nobody
took.
was all it took. No one was coming through the door. The door wasn't open. Just the one blind picking up halfway and then coming down. He was like, no.
Dang. To me, that is wild because a lot of times you don't have witnesses to these events, right?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
And I'm not trying to say this in a bad way. I think you're the problem. I think it's you. You
Problem.
say
I've been told
problem,
that.
and I mean, let me rephrase that. You are a magnet for these kind
Yeah.
of things. I am a repellent for these kind of things. So I wonder what would happen if we sat in the same room for long enough. Because
It might be interesting.
yeah, it could just cancel each other out. I've been to places, I've been with people who are sensitive, I've been to spooky places. I've dipped my toe or more into this realm and nothing. And it's funny because my stepmom was very worried about me doing this show because
Yeah.
being so involved in this energy, she was genuinely like, how are you so sure you're safe? I said, listen, I feel, and this is just me repeating something from a previous episode. She was a guest about it was good times. Anyway, she was asking about it because she says it's like an energy, it's like electricity. I was like, listen, I am a closed circuit. Whatever is going on here, I'm not open to anything else, for better or for worse. I can't say I've had no experiences, but so few that it's like it might as well be nothing, right? I'm not asking
Yeah.
for more. I'm just here. I'm just here. Whenever I'm around people or places with this energy or sensitivities, I feel like my being there kind of cancels a lot of stuff out. I'd be curious as to how that dynamic would be interesting. Vibes would be interesting
Yeah.
because I do believe in these things. I'm going to ask you this. We can get into this now if you want, or we can save it for later. But religiously, I have a religious background. I'm a Christian, and that automatically brings in a certain amount of beliefs, right?
Mhm.
Spirits, spirituality. It makes it easier to digest a lot of the more supernatural things when it comes to ghost, right? Aliens, that's another thing. I have no idea. I don't know. So that's a tougher one to reconcile. Maybe it's this, maybe it's that, who knows? But growing up religious and just having that kind of background, a lot of people have an easier time saying, yeah, there's spirits, there's ghosts. It's a spirit of some sort, whether it's a spirit that hasn't been born or won't be born, or it's a spirit of someone who lived and died and they don't know they're dead, or they're dead and they're just being a dick. The possibilities are endless, right? But we can put a face or some sort of logic to it from a religious standpoint. And then you get
Mhm.
people who I've had guests on the show that are more agnostic or the atheist leading. And I asked them, how do you reconcile this? How do you make it make sense? And they all have their own ways of doing it. I wanted to ask you, what is your background? How do you obviously have had these experiences, so you know there's something going on. Well, what do you do to put your mind at ease or make it make sense for yourself? Where are you coming from with all of this?
That's a tough question. I don't really know that I've dove in like that. I just believe that there is more to the afterlife than we can see.
Yeah.
I'm not a religious person at all. I think I'm more agnostic. I believe in everything and accept that there's things you can't explain that are far beyond what our conscious can fathom.
Right. There's more that we don't know than we do.
Hmm.
No matter what background you come from, religious or not,
Yeah.
there's so much we just don't know and may never know. So who's to say? we know our experiences. You've experienced them. That is very real
Yeah.
to you. So you know there's something going.
Yeah.
But with different people, it's just like that. It's like I just know that I don't know anything.
Yeah.
Right? It's like I know there's a lot more out there. Call it God, call it universe, call it energies, call it whatever. It's the idea that we just don't know much.
Yeah.
And I can still be in my religion and accept I don't know everything and try and make peace with and try and reconcile what's happening with my beliefs and try and make it all make sense. And sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It is what it is. So yeah, I'm always curious how people approach these situations because again, there's so many different viewpoints. I'm derailing us again, so I apologize. So
You're fine.
let's go back. The blinds on the door
Uh-huh.
lift and flip, and you've convinced someone. And we talked about you being a magnet and me being a repellent. I'll let you just take it from there. Continue on. I know you have a lot to go. Your notes.
I don't know if where you took us fits in with this next story. I don't know if the apartment we lived in was a hotspot of energy or if it was haunted. Backstory, when I was 2, my dad passed away. I've never dreamed of him. I've never seen him. I've always been like, I see and hear all these other things, but why not him? It was my son's birthday is Halloween. We had moved into that apartment in November ish, and it was the wee hours just turned Halloween morning. And I kept hearing a whistling, like a, and I kept waking up and I'm like, what is that? And it would stop. I would go back to sleep. I'd hear the whistling again. And I thought maybe my husband had changed his alarm to a whistle to wake up. And I'm like, what is this whistling that just keeps happening? I'm trying to ignore it, trying to go back to sleep. And I'm like, hey, your alarm's going off. And he's like, no, it's not. So it stops. I go back to sleep. And I know my dad's voice because I have a video of him recording me and talking to me when I was little. I was vaguely in and out of going back to sleep and still awake. I heard, wake up. I can't believe my grandson's won. I shot out of bed and I was fully awake at that point. And it was his voice. Looked at my husband and I was like, okay, did this just happen? Am I hallucinating? Like, I know that was his voice. I know I was half asleep, half awake. I woke him up and I was like, did you hear that? And he's like, no, what do you, and so I told him the whole thing. I'm like, it is Damien's birthday. I don't know what just happened, but this is what somebody said. I can't believe he's won. And I don't think I slept for the rest of the day after that.
Wow. Wild.
Yeah.
That's a good experience. I mean, that's not bad, right? Wow.
It was great, but it was just so startling.
You're awake now for sure.
Yeah. Mhm.
Wow. It's not very often we get nice experiences like that told on the show. So that's a nice little refreshing palate cleanser from the toy box thing and everything before.
The toy box tragedy.
I'm never going to forget that. You've literally seared that into my brain. And I have a very
I'm
active
sorry.
imagination. I can picture things in my brain as you're saying it, and it's never going to go away. But that is beautiful. That's a wonderful experience. And I'm glad you shared that with us. So thank you. It's not all unholy vibes over here, folks.
No.
No, that's awesome. That's really good. So that was a few years ago, or how recent was that now?
That was my son. He'll be 17,
Oh, that was a
16 years
while ago.
ago.
For
It
some
was
reason,
forever ago.
I'm thinking your son is like a child. Still not an adult, but not a baby. Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. So that was 16 years ago.
Uh-huh.
And we're jumping all over the place timeline wise. Has your
Yeah.
son ever been part of these experiences? Has he had some crazy stuff happen to him?
No.
No, it's just you.
Nope. Mhm.
He helped you get on Discord, right? Thank you for that,
Yeah.
Damien.
Yes.
Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm done freaking out. Please continue.
Let me look at my notes here.
Oh,
I don't think I have anything else from that apartment. I had a friend that had a few experiences of another place. We had lived in Washington maybe 5 years the first time we moved from an apartment to another place on base that was a 2 bedroom. And then we had another baby, so we needed a 3 bedroom. And we had just moved in. I went home for a little bit, had my daughter there, and then we came back. We had just moved into this house, and my husband was getting ready to deploy to Afghanistan. And this unit that we lived in, it was like a row of probably 10, and they were all letters. We were B. The people in A, there was nobody that was in there. They were redoing the windows, so everything was gutted on that side. We were in B, and the people in C, her spouse was in the same unit as my husband. She was moving back home and they were gone by the time this happened. When they leave, they typically leave very early in the morning. And I had asked a friend if she could stay and just be a warm body for the kids. They would be asleep. Riley was just a baby and Damien was probably 4. And she was like, yeah, no problem. So it was an upstairs and a downstairs, and nobody in A, nobody in C. And we were in B. She came over. Riley was a baby. Damien was probably 4, both sleeping. When I came back from dropping my spouse off, she was like, okay, I'm ready to go home. And she was like, are you sure you don't have any neighbors in any of the units next to you? I was like, no, they don't have windows. That's not even livable right now. And they just moved out. And she was like, I heard running up and down the hallway all night. Like somebody was up there. Damien was asleep. Baby is a few months old in the crib. She was like, I am freaked out. That freaked me out. My husband just left for a year, and now you're telling me you're hearing running throughout the hall in the middle of the night. I was trying to calm down, asked her to go outside with me. So we stepped outside and we went to come back inside. The door was locked.
No.
The back door was locked. And I was like, oh my God, my children are in there sleeping. Luckily, she didn't leave. She was still there. So I hadn't locked the front door. So we were able to go around, and the back door was locked.
Bolt locked, like the deadbolt.
So we had the door and then a screen door. That door with the little tiny lock was twisted.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So regardless, it would have had to have been
Yeah.
after it was closed.
Yes.
It's not like one of those handle locks where you can twist it and then close it and it will stay locked.
No.
Okay.
No.
Gotcha.
No.
Luckily you got back in.
Oh yeah.
That kind of stuff is equally terrifying to me because I do have a toddler. He's 3.5, and I would freak out. I'd be like, well, time to break the windows.
Yeah. I was hoping it wouldn't come to that.
So you lived there for a while. Did you ever end up hearing any of this yourself? Or was it just this other lady?
No, it was just her. Other than the door locking, I didn't have any experiences. I was just kind of like, oh, great, this is what's going to happen. I was mentally preparing for it.
Right.
And nothing really ever happened.
That's good.
Yeah.
With your track record, having a little break ain't so bad.
No, no.
So I feel like we've gotten through all the juicy bits. Do you have a couple more you're holding out on us, or
I've got a couple more.
Okay. Dive in, hit me with those other ones, and then we can discuss after.
Okay. I think this one's probably my best one, physically worst one, probably my last. This was when I had just graduated high school and it was summertime. I was dating this guy, and his parents had a lake house down at the Ozarks. I had stayed there before. The upstairs had 2 rooms and it was divided by a long hallway. Bathroom was in the middle, and then there was 2 rooms.
Okay.
I had always been in one room and never had any issues. This last time I was in a different room, and the feeling in that room was just already off. I'm like, shake it off because I'm not used to being in here. It's a different one. It was time to go to sleep. I just closed my eyes, ignored my feeling. I woke up to what felt like somebody was hovering over my ear and went right into it. And I like jolted up, and nobody was there. I was gaslighting myself like maybe I just was dreaming this. It's okay. Go back to sleep. It was nothing. After a while and I calmed down, I drifted back to sleep and was woken again by something had grabbed my hair. My head was being yanked back, and I was fully awake, threw off the covers, ran down the hall, and I was like, I am not sleeping in that room. Somebody like, that was it for me. There was no gaslighting. Somebody grabbed my hair and yanked my head back. And I was terrified. I ended up telling the guy I was dating. He told his parents, and they were like, I think she's crazy. Nothing has ever happened. We've had this house forever. And I was like, I'm telling you, no, you can't make me go in that room again.
I don't like that either.
Yeah.
That's
That was the,
terrifying. Physical
yeah,
interaction.
yeah. That was the only time that I've ever had a physical, and that was it for me. I never went back to the house again. I was done.
What do you even do?
You know, and then for nobody to believe that happened when my eyes are open and my head is being yanked back.
And you'd been there before, but not in that room.
Hmm.
The other room, you were fine. No
Yeah,
spooky experiences.
I was fine, and I never felt weird. But as soon as I walked in this room, the vibe is just off. I just try to ignore it. Something about that room.
The ghost living there was upset that you guys had switched up your room assignments.
Yeah, pretty much.
Oh, wow. I don't have too many people that I've talked to that have crazy physical interactions.
Hmm.
I've got one other that I can think of off the top of my head. I've yet to record with them, but they've told me the story. That would be what actually put me over the edge, I think, is
Yeah,
once it gets physical, you have to take some sort of action, right? Imagine if that's happening in the place you're living. You got to do something.
yeah.
I genuinely hope your house you're in now, I hope your interactions and experiences are minimal to none. I really do.
Thank you. I hope they are too.
So that's very intense and that's a great peak. Do you have any more or was that
Hmm.
the peak?
That was it.
Well, thank you. If I were to put it on a graph, this episode has been like bam, 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 up and down, and I have emotional whiplash. So thank you. Feel
I'm
it's
sorry.
fantastic. Thank you. This has been a
Good.
very spooky roller coaster we've been on today. Some really high highs, some really low lows, but all in the best way possible. And a nice little pit stop in between for a happy experience. So, wow,
Yeah,
thank you. And I hope everyone listening, if I haven't asked a specific question, you know what to do. Reach out to me and say, hey, reach back out and ask about this because in the moment, I can never think of all the right questions to ask. Thank you for coming on. This has been so fantastic. Going forward, if anything happens, reach out to me.
oh, for sure.
I want you to be, there needs to be some correspondence here. You can just message me and be like, something went down, and then we can talk. But yeah, if you run into any other people that have really good stories, send them my way, just like Cassie did with you. I want to continue
Yeah,
doing this. I'm in this for the love of the game. I love stories. I love just hearing people's experiences. And so, yeah, please send someone my way. Military spouses are ripe for the picking when it comes to these stories. Is there anything else you want to dive into or discuss, or do you feel pretty good about this?
I feel good about that. Those are my main stories.
I'm never going to get over that toy box. Okay. So, Andrea, thank you for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me.
You've been a tremendous guest. First of all, do you want anyone to follow your socials? Do you have anything you want to promote while you're here?
I don't.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you again for coming. You've been fantastic. Everyone, be sure to share this with others. If you know anyone that has experiences, send them my way. We've had a lot of people on the show that were referrals from other people, and I love that. So pay it forward in the spookiest way, right? So let's keep
Yeah.
doing that. If you or anyone you know has stories or have been affected by a spooky specter, reach out to me at Unholy Vibes Pod on TikTok and Instagram, or you can email unholybibespod@gmail.com. I've already had more anonymous submissions for those of you who are too scared to be on camera or to have your voice heard. So please, if you don't want to be on the show, at least let your story be told. I will tell it for you. Just draft it up, write it up, email it to me, whatever you want to do. Thank you all for listening. I love you. Stay spooky, stay hydrated, and we'll see you on the next episode.